Questions? Go for it.
Well, go ahead. I got 15, but
I know you do.
pare it down to 10.
Go ahead.
Senator, Hillary Clinton came out against the Trans-Pacific Partnership last week or the week before, and you've come out against it as well. There are some folks who have looked at it that have said copyright and patent protections, especially with drugs, is really going to raise drug costs in the long run. How do we, if this deal should go through, is there any hope that we can reduce drug costs if patents are extended and companies can raise drug prices thousands of percent?
I would think Trans-Pacific Partnership, there are a lot of reasons to be against it. One is what it does to the cost of medicine in poor nations, especially. It's not clear to me that the drug companies can use it to raise prices in this country, but it is clear to me they can use it to raise prices in the poorest countries in the world that need for AIDS drugs, for malaria, for other kinds of, for antiretrovirals and antibiotics, and for tuberculosis and other things. So, but there are a whole host of reasons, primarily job loss, that Trans-Pacific Partnership will bring, as did NAFTA, as did these other trade agreements.
Have you ever sat down with Senator Portman, your other colleague in the Senate, and actually talked about why Medicare can't negotiate for better drug prices?
About this, I have spoken with him about the trade issues a number of times, and we've worked together on some trade enforcement. He's for TPP, I'm against it, so we don't see eye to eye on the bigger issue. I've not talked to him about this. I think I probably will now. Thank you.
Okay.
And what about the argument on the other side that these high prices are necessary for research, for other treatments down the road and things like that?
Well, the companies that have bought the rights to these drugs generally did not do the research and development. They didn't pay for the expensive clinical trials. These are drugs that long ago were brought to market long ago, and where the research and development costs were borne by somebody else, in some cases decades ago. So this is just price gouging, just opportunistic, just opportunities for executives to cash in and make a lot of money. But we've seen the way they've done this, and it's probably not criminal, but it's immoral and reprehensible.
There are other initiatives underway to kind of rein this in, since it's becoming more of an issue?
We're talking to Department of Health and Human Services about looking at all other kinds of options too. This will be hard to pass in Congress because of the power of the drug companies. I'm hopeful the President can use executive powers he has to help on this. We were able, with that drug progesterone, that P17 that St. Louis drug company took, and raised the price from $10 to $15 up to $1,500 for expectant mothers. We're able, through public shaming and some fairly tough language from the Secretary of HHS, to push the price back down. So we're trying to make sure that we bring as much attention to this as possible. And these companies should be embarrassed. These executives should be embarrassed. They are making literally hundreds of millions of dollars from selling the drugs at these prices, which means that so many people can't afford them, and so many people go without as a result. And it's just outrageous behavior.
I've also heard the argument, though, that some of these drugs are actually been losing money, and they need to raise the price so they're actually a profitable.
I heard people say that. I think that raising the price 800% is a mildly questionable practice. None of them, they would have quit making them long ago if they were losing money at that rate. They might be one of many drugs a company has that's a bit of a loss leader, or they're not making money too much on that. But raising the price 20% is one thing. Raising it 800% or 1,000% is a pretty hostile act aimed at the heart of the American public.
Well, my question is, a corporation, a company, they can afford to be embarrassed. They can afford to have suggestions and recommendations thrown at them. But what most of the companies will not afford, or will not tolerate, is being fined billions of dollars by the federal government. So what does the federal government intend to do to really put some teeth on some regulations to prevent this kind of thing in the future?
our legislation would answer most of those questions and would make a big difference in the prices they are able to charge. What these companies did may not have been illegal. It's
Right.
just unethical. So the government can't come in and fine them if they didn't do anything, legally wrong.
Correct.
I'm not a lawyer, but we're talking to lawyers to find out if there is any way that we can come down on these executives that are making millions themselves and maybe hundreds of millions for their companies by this kind of price gouging.
There are a lot of priorities in D.C. How much of a priority is this?
There are a lot of priorities, but this is so important to a whole lot of people. I mean, there are 55 million Americans on Medicare. I'm not saying all 55 million are hit by this, but millions of people potentially are, and people not on Medicare are hit by these costs of a diabetes drug or another drug that's pretty important that their doctor says is pretty important to their health.
How much support on both sides of the aisle do you see this getting?
We don't have Republican support yet on this. I'm hopeful we will. I'm always concerned next to the NRA and probably Wall Street, the pharmaceutical companies are the most powerful lobbyists in Washington.
How do you put pressure on the GOP to get this
Well, you
support?
put pressure by the same way I think, for want of a better term, shame some of these executives. And maybe, in fact, when the public understands this better, there will be more pressure on all of us to do the right thing.
For this bill, do we have any Democratic co-sponsors?
We have a lot of interest. Yeah, we will have a number of Democratic co-sponsors. We have in the past. I just don't. I'm sorry, I don't have a list of who they are, but we can get that to you. And there will be more.
In the specific legislation, I mean, there's been a lot of in the news. I know, like recently, was it a few weeks ago, there was that HIV drug that was extremely raised. So is this initiative only going to help seniors? And if so, are there other groups that you guys are looking to help as well?
This legislation initially will only be aimed at seniors because Medicare pays a lot of money for drugs, obviously.
Right.
Sorry. Let me start again since I interrupted myself. I apologize. My daughter is actually 6 days past her due date, and she lives in Columbus, and I'm kind of checking because I just talked to her. And anyway, that's why I really started again. I forgot. The Medicare.
Yes, like is this only affecting seniors and other groups?
Our legislation is aimed directly at Medicare,
Right.
Negotiating on behalf of 55 million Medicare beneficiaries on a whole host of drugs that they take, negotiating one by one as the VA does. If we are successful in this, you will see insurance companies and others begin to follow the prices that we're able to negotiate for Medicare in many cases. So it will affect the second round. It will begin to affect drug pricing generally, we found in the past. And we're going to look at other ways to affect. We hope to have some impact on people of all ages.
Senator, I can probably safely say amongst this group here, I'm the only person that's actually participating in Social Security and Medicare. I am of a certain age, as it were. Veering just a little bit off topic here, but sort of picking up on the notion of regulations. Yesterday, Ohio's governor, running for president, came out with this big, broad blueprint plan, and he basically said Washington is obsolete. I don't know if you saw his article in the Washington Post, but it was Washington is obsolete. Is Washington obsolete? He seems to want to go there and unpack it and send it back to the states.
It's still there. It's still people like Ethan are there and sleep there and work there. I don't know what obsolete means. You'll have to ask.
Well, he talks about.
Always ask me to comment on Kasich.
Well, he's our governor, isn't he?
Well, I understand that.
I understand. Well, he
He's
talks
probably
about.
your presidential candidate too, right?
Well, I understand. I'm trying to report. I'm trying to give him fair and balanced coverage.
I don't know what he meant by that. I'm sorry.
Well, but he has talked about entitlement reform, and entitlement we know is code for Social Security and Medicare. Yeah. He seems to want to have people work longer and get less when they finally get there.
I don't. When I hear people talk about entitlement reform, they mean cutting cost of living adjustment through change CPI. They mean voucherize Medicare and raise the retirement age for Medicare. I know too many people who work at Walmart or work construction or work at a diner or work in manufacturing that can't work till they're 67 or 68 or 70 years old, their bodies break down. And to raise the eligibility age for Medicare is just something that doesn't make sense to me. And I just think that, as the Pope Francis said, he admonished his parish priest to go out and smell like the flock. In other words, go out and see how people live, and my colleagues ought to go out and see how people are living if they want to raise the eligibility age for Medicare.
Do you have any explanation why the United States is the only advanced industrial nation in the world that has our for-profit kind of health care system?
They lobby well. Other questions? All right. Thanks, everybody.